It's September 2nd, 2018. This is Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming, episode number 23. Let's roll! And we're back. Thank you for joining us this week. Episode 23, Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming, and little raw this morning. Actually, it's not morning anymore. See, that's how raw I am. I'm actually recording this a little later than usual. I usually record the show on Saturday mornings. It's now Saturday afternoon. I went with my wife to see Ed Sheeran last night. He was playing at the Rogers Centre in Toronto. So, you know, me and 50,000 of my closest friends were there to see Ed Sheeran. And this was a Christmas present, actually, for my wife. I got the tickets late last year. Pretty expensive, too. And she's a big Ed Sheeran fan. My daughter was actually there in kind of nosebleed seats at the back with her friends as well. It seems like every woman in the city was there. So you had, you know, girls with other girls. You had women with other women. You had girls with their boyfriends or women with their husbands. But you did not see... You also had, you know, fathers with their daughters. But you did not see two dudes together. Okay, you did not see a dude and his two friends there to see Ed Sheeran. It was almost completely and exclusively led by women and men escorting women. Sometimes reluctantly, but you know what? I'm not a huge Ed Sheeran fan. I'm aware of his music because I've got a daughter and a wife that listen to him all the time. But let me just tell you something. This dude rocks. Okay, it was a terrific show. One of the things about this guy that I wasn't aware, I'm not a big fan, is it's just him and his guitar. And I think he's got like a loop track or some kind of a foot pedal that basically lets him record some of his own music. And then what he does is he loops his own music. He is the lead singer, and he is the backup singer, and he is the drummer, and he is the guitarist, and he does everything. Nothing is pre-recorded. He starts every song with a blank slate, just him and his loop pedal. And the entire song, he is the backup singer to himself. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. You can see this. If you're on the video, you can look on our YouTube. I've posted it up. It's actually getting some pretty good views already. I'll play a few minutes of his of my recording of probably his biggest song of the night. But just watch the beginning. I'll play like about a minute of it. If you're listening, just listen to how the tracks kind of come together. There is no backup. There is no backup singers. There is no drummer. There is no rhythm guitar, bass guitar. There is nothing but him. And everything that you hear here, including the backup vocals, the drumming, the beating, everything is done by him through his loop pedal. Now let me just put this, because this you know what, and I might be behind the times, and this is very common, but this is pretty amazing. Let me just I'm going to play about a minute of it here. So apologies if you think this is lame, but my podcast, and I think it's cool. This was
fast and then we talk slow. Come over and start up a conversation with just me, and trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, run them out on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Sing, girl, you know I want your love. Your love wasn't made for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much.
All right, thank you very much there, Ed Sheeran. You know what? Hats off. I got a lot of respect for this guy. And you know what? Beyond just the fact that I've got respect for him now is the fact that we nerds have won. Okay, Ed Sheeran is probably the biggest heartthrob on the planet right now. And look at him. He's one of us. He's a nerd, okay? And we have completely destroyed everything. We own the world. And Ed Sheeran is evidence of that, and all of the women that that felt that heartbreak when they saw his wedding ring yesterday at the show, because they put the wedding ring on the big screen. And every young lady around me was upset when they saw that. In any case, that's Ed Sheeran. I had, as you can tell, pretty good seats there for the wife and myself. And our featured, our non-sponsored video this week is going to be Ed Sheeran. I'm going to put it over here. This is Ed Sheeran Multiply Live in Dublin. So this is a full concert in Dublin, Ireland. I don't have a full concert for Toronto, so we're going to go with his Dublin concert here. I'm going to keep it up here somewhere. Let's get the size right, and we'll put it right. He's such a nerd. I love it. All right, so we'll put that there for you guys with a lazy eye. You can kind of keep your eye tracked. For the rest of us, we've got a busy show today. We've got some stories on Valve. We're going to talk a little more of a hardware focus this week. In particular, I want to talk a little bit about ray tracing. AMD chips, the Atari VCS. We're going to take a look at some really good kit out of Acer. And then we're going to take a look at a story about BattleTech, which may be coming soon. Hero of the Kingdoms 3 RPG is available now. And then we're going to focus on a story that showed up in PC Gamer this week, Best Writing in Gaming, and we'll kind of explore what writing means and what we think and what our views are in terms of some great writing in gaming. That's that. Let's come back in 10 seconds with the news. We're back here, episode 23, mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming. First story today is out of Fast Company. This is Fast Company, amp.fastcompany.com. Good article here that I would ask for all of you guys out there to kind of just respond to yourselves. And the question is, if you haven't already switched to Firefox, why not? Because you're only feeding the dragon that is actually hurting our privacy and probably the internet as well, which is Google Chrome. Okay, and this story basically, the actual headline is, if you haven't already switched to Firefox, do it now. And along with the multiple containers and the privacy switches that are basically turned to the proper off by default in Firefox, the fact that it's faster, uses fewer resources, is more secure. Mozilla has recently announced that they're basically announcing plans to block all third-party trackers to the browser, and they're going to have that turned on by default. And so this is by Catherine Schwab, on Fast Company, as I said. Excuse me. So just reading from the article. This week, Mozilla announced that its browser, Firefox, will start blocking all cross-site third-party trackers, the cookies hiding in the background that follow your clicks across the web, reporting your activity to advertisers as you move between websites. Including these settings by default is the best way to protect users from inadvertently giving third parties data about users' behavior. Just as people tend to not read long privacy policies, they also shouldn't be expected to change the settings to disable third-party trackers on every single site they visit. As Mozilla's head of product strategy, Nick Nguyen, writes on the Mozilla blog, in the physical world, users wouldn't expect hundreds of vendors to follow them from store to store, spying on the products they look at or purchase. Users have the same expectations of privacy on the web, and yet, in reality, they are tracked wherever they go. Trackers instituted by the site you're visiting will remain in place. Trackers don't just track you, though. They also slow down download times for websites. Mozilla cites a study by the ad blocker Ghostery, which found that 55% of the time required to load a website is spent loading third-party trackers. Without these trackers, sites will load faster, making the overall user experience better. Mozilla will be testing how much blocking trackers impact load times in September. If its approach to blocking trackers does reduce load times, it will roll out the same technology to the regular Firefox browser later this year. If you're interested in trying it out now, you can download Firefox nightly to see how the features work. So the story continues on, but that's the point. And I'm not sure how many of you guys are aware of this, but when you are on your browser, Facebook, let's say, if you're into that, or Google, or whoever you are on, they basically put little cookies on your browser, on your computer, and then they see every other site that you visit. They know everything about every site that you visit, and it might be persistent as well. It might not go away when you close your browser. And who knows that this is done? You're kind of accepting it when they put that annoying little kind of privacy thing. Do you accept cookies? Okay, and you really have to say yes, or you can't see the site. But who reads that stuff, right? And the fact that they can do that by default is a failure on behalf of Google and browsers in general. And what Firefox, when I switched to Firefox, the first, the most recent time, and it stuck, was when Firefox basically put together they're called multi-account containers as a feature. It's actually a feature in the lab that you have to turn on. And what the multi-account containers do is they allow you to basically log into a different account on each tab. They also prevent cookies from tracking you across tabs. So, for example, I've got a number of different Twitter accounts, right? So I can have one tab, I can be, mostly Linux. In another tab, I can be somebody else. In a third tab, I can be somebody else, and I can run them all concurrently, which is good. And each of the different instances can't see what I'm doing in the other tabs. So, that was, and the big part of that was just, I resent being tracked, on every site that I visit by every other site that I visit. So what this is going to do, it's not available now. It's available in the nightly or the canary version if you're a Chrome head. It'll be coming out later this year. They're just going to basically turn it on by default so that these cookies do not track you. And that is a positive, user-first, consumer-friendly benefit. And Firefox is acting like we, the users, are their customers and not the advertisers. And so I just ask you again, if you haven't already switched to Firefox, why not? You use Linux for a reason, if you do use Linux, okay? And for many of the same reasons, you should stop using Chrome. Anyway, let's leave that. Next story, we're going to have a couple of stories here on Valve. Which has been very busy lately. With news about SteamOS, of course, Proton, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But, you know, these guys are getting it on, and they're starting to be a little more competitive. This story is from PC Gamer. The headline is, Valve is getting into live streaming, Amazon is making games, and Discord is selling them. It's by Tyler Wilde. Everyone is doing everything, but who will do everything the best? Just kind of a brief little summary here. Again, like I said, this is Tyler Wilde on PC Gamer. Valve launched live streaming website Steam.tv last week, broadcasting the International 2018 in a coy jaunt into Twitch's territory. Not a brazen incursion yet, but a casual reminder of intent. Meanwhile, while Valve has been fairly quiet about its game development projects outside of Artifact, Twitch owner Amazon showed off one of its new games at Gamescom 2018, an MMO called New World. Discord also took a stroll into Valve's neighborhood recently, announcing that it's going to start selling games within its chat client. Valve replied with a new Steam chat client that's awfully Discord-like. And so the rest of the article basically talks about, you know, more about Valve's live streaming efforts, Amazon's game development efforts, with a reveal of New World. I'm not going to play the trailer for New World because it's not coming to Linux. And that's really a lost opportunity for Amazon. You know, Amazon uses Linux internally. You know, they compete with Google and Microsoft and Apple and, you know, a whole bunch of other guys, and supporting open source standards would be just, it would be tremendously advantageous to them. But heretofore they're ignoring it. It's possible that they're just too small and they're going after the big market right now. And then of course there's Discord, which does have a Linux client. The store tab is currently in beta testing, but it should be coming soon. And I guess, you know, what all this basically shows is that competition in PC gaming is heating up. And, you know, we've all been complaining, I think, for a long time, you know, that, you know, we don't have a lot of choice. The one thing I do worry about, though, is, you know, Valve is critically important to Linux gaming. You know, there's a lot of talking about GOG and Itch.io or other people, but really what has made Linux gaming a thing is Valve. And with all due respect to all of you guys and DRM and all that, you know, stuff, GOG has done very little for Linux, okay? Very little. And really insignificant contribution to Linux other than putting, you know, Linux games on GOG, which are, you know, a hassle to even install. If you know, I'm just a little concerned, you know, if Valve loses its grip on PC gaming, I think we at the Linux house might be negatively affected as well. I am interested to see, like, you know, whether Discord is going to sell Linux compatible games on its store. I haven't seen any yet, but it's still in beta, and I've not heard anything out of Amazon about Linux support. But, you know, how good would it be if both of those guys offered Linux support? You know, just kind of, you know, extending the large call to action that Valve made for Linux gaming with Proton. You know what? The industry has an opportunity here to diminish the Windows platform for gaming to some degree, and I think all of these companies, Valve, Amazon, GOG, Discord, Origin, you know, Fortnite, Epic, might benefit from doing that. And, you know, how cool would it be if they all kind of got together to basically launch some Linux clients? Yeah, that would work. I'm pretty sure we'd hit some mainstream gamers if these guys could all coordinate and offer some support. Next story is again about Valve. This is a story from IGN. Let me just launch it up. It is from IGN. Let's find the link. No, this is actually from PC Gamer again. We're in a place to invest and focus a lot more on games again, says Valve, and hallelujah. Hallelujah. This story is by Wes Fenlon, PC Gamer. Valve knows all the jokes about its recent lack of game releases and reiterates there's more coming after the artifact. This is actually a summary of an article, of an interview that showed up on IGN. That's why I mentioned IGN earlier on. You know what? Let me just kind of put it aside here. I actually dislike this kind of reporting. It's the sense that, you know, IGN did the work for the interview, and now PC Gamer is reporting on the IGN interview and getting the clicks. But, you know, it's rampant throughout. I haven't looked through the IGN article actually at all, so I'm not going to go back there for the sake of keeping this podcast going, but for the record, I think that's shady. In an interview with IGN, developers at Valve have spoken about the company's lack of new game releases over the past several years and acknowledged that they're not oblivious to the comments and jokes online about the company's reputation for being opaque. This is the second time in recent months Valve has made it clear it has new games projects in the works and not just its card game Artifact. In March, Valve's Gabe Newell said Artifact is the first of several games that are going to be coming from us. So that's sort of good news. Hooray, Valve's going to start shipping games again. Newell referred to Valve's work over the past several years as an investment in the future, language echoed by Artifact programmer Brandon Reinhardt in IGN's interview. We spent a lot of time improving customer service on Steam, Reinhardt said. That was a hard problem, and it took a bunch of people a bunch of time to work on it. And now we're in a place where we're able to, as a company, invest and focus a lot more on games again. The answer to, you're just sitting on your butt, sitting on a pile of money, swimming around the gold vault is to not actually do that, to deliver a bunch of high-quality games that show we're actually working really hard. The first of those games, after Artifact, will likely be in the Valley of Gods from Firewatch developers Campo Santo. Valve purchased the studio and took over publishing duties back in April, and I could not be happier to see a strong Valve out there in the future for the reasons I just mentioned in the previous story. Now let's move away from Valve and talk about ray tracing. Now, I am happy. Oops, that's not ray tracing. Let's get our ray tracing story. I'm happy to be right up front and say, you know what? I waited while the presentation was on, the NVIDIA presentation. I pre-ordered a 2080 Ti, and I can't wait for it to come. It's expensive as heck, but you know what, I replace graphics cards every 3 to 5 years. You divide the price by, say, 5 years, and I'm good. And I've got so many computers around, I can repurpose them as they get old. So it works for me. I'm not saying you guys should all go out there and buy, you know, $1,200 graphics cards. It is crazy, and it's not for everybody. But you know what? The 2070 is about $500. The 2080 is about $600. You know, there is a range of prices that are going to be out there. And most of the stories I have read out there have been somewhat self-serving. Two points that they make, right? One is good advice, which is wait for reviews, but it's also incredibly self-serve, right? Wait for reviews because I am going to tell you, you know, whether you should buy it or not. I guess you need a review. Sometimes it just hits me the wrong way when people are you know, kind of positing themselves as such amazing experts because they run a YouTube channel that you should wait for their word. But in any case, you probably should. The second thing is I think it's a mistake for anybody to recommend that you buy anything other than a 20 series GPU right now. And it depends again on your purchasing habits, your budgets, and all of that kind of stuff. But let me just first start up about what ray tracing is, and I'll explain to you what my thinking is about why you should hold off. If you've got an older card, hold off. But your next card should be a 20 series card or the AMD equivalent. Okay. So this article here is from the Motley Fool. This is more of an investor's website by Nicholas Rosolilo. And the question here is, what is ray tracing and why should NVIDIA investors care? The graphics card maker is readying itself to take on a $250 billion industry. So what is ray tracing? Computer-generated graphics have improved by leaps and bounds over the years, and NVIDIA thinks ray tracing will be the next big breakthrough. While many games look pretty realistic, one thing holding them back from true lifelike images has to do with light. That's because video games operate in real-time interactive worlds with no two experiences being identical. Thus, game developers render light using a method called rasterization. In layman's terms, it's a shortcut that renders 3D projects as two-dimensional pixels, then shades them based on lighting in the game. It cuts down the need for massive computing power and has gotten pretty good at rendering high-quality images. Ray tracing does away with rasterization and instead uses the same technique our eyes and brain use to render what we see in the real world. Light hits 3D objects and creates shadows, reflections, and refractions, altering the colors that we see and the intensity of light in different areas of an environment. The use of 3D objects and their actual interaction with a beam of light takes a lot more computing power, especially in real time. NVIDIA is accomplishing it with artificial intelligence powered by dedicated processors built into its new GPUs. NVIDIA says its new GPU ray tracing technology is the biggest breakthrough in a decade. They've dubbed the architecture for these new chips Turing, which will be the foundation for a new lineup of NVIDIA's products going forward. These new GPUs will power next-generation video games, ones that NVIDIA thinks will rival the best artistic work as seen at the movies. That's good news for gamers, but the capabilities of these small cards could also help them catch up to the visual effects in Hollywood. So this is the key issue here with respect to these graphics cards. NVIDIA is introducing this new technology, which is going to admittedly require some tuning. Not every game is going to be compatible, and not every developer is going to use it. But NVIDIA is 80-something odd % of the market. And we see that the most popular single card on Steam today is the 1060. And we know that as these cards are out there, it might not be the 2070, but the 2060, to the extent that it includes ray tracing technology, will become the most popular card within a year or two. That's always been the case with the NVIDIA cards. The 970 was the most popular card of the previous generation. So could very well be the 2070 this time. And what is happening here is that this technology cannot work on the 10 series cards and earlier. So if you are buying those cards and they're going to be inexpensive, just be aware that you are buying into obsolescence. So you're basically trading off a lower price now for a shorter life of the card. And if you kind of take a look at the card and you divide it by the number of years that you expect to use it, like I do, you're probably going to end up paying more per year, even though you're paying less upfront. Because this technology is going to happen. AMD will include ray tracing in its next generation GPUs as well. This will be the way that things are going, and you're going to be stuck as the guy, and I'm going to age myself here, who bought a 286 on the cheap as the 386 was launched. Okay, or who bought a 32-bit system, as 64-bit systems were coming out there. You're going to lack compatibility. You're going to lack compatibility, and you're going to be frustrated. So I'm not saying you need to go out and buy a 20 series card right now. Far be it. What I am saying is that if you've got a decent 10 series card, like a 1060, do not upgrade to a 1080. Right? Just wait a year instead. Or if you've got the equivalent AMD card. There is no reason to buy a 10 series card right now if you've already got one. Now, if you've got a 770 or a 780 Ti, I would say the same thing. You know, live with it for another year, right? But there is no reason to buy a 10 series card right now. You're buying into obsolescence. The low price factors in more rapid obsolescence, and I would not buy it. I would say you have two choices now with the impact of this technology. One is buy a 20 series card if you can afford it. Second is wait. That's what you should be doing. In terms of the impact of this technology, we have a story here. This is PC Games N. And they ran a story. I believe actually this may have shown up in... let me just see a story. I did see a Digital Foundry analysis. No, that's not the story. Actually, this is a better story than that. I thought I was gonna show you the trailer that Digital Foundry put together, highlighting Battlefield 5's ray tracing technology. You should go and take a look at that. I'm not going to show it on the show here, but go and take a look. It is actually quite impressive. The frame rates are going to take a hit, though. You know, you're going to have a choice between, let's say, 4K 60 with ray tracing off, or 1080p 60 with ray tracing on. And I'm interested to see, how it compares. To me, ray tracing is probably going to be as big of an impact as, say, HDR is. And HDR makes a huge difference to games. I've compared side by side HDR and non-HDR, and if I had a choice between higher resolution versus HDR, I would pick HDR every time. But in any case, if you're looking to upgrade your build to get a 20 series card, which is what I'm looking to do, I'm running right now on a 4770. I've got 16 gigs of RAM and an AMD 1070. An NVIDIA GTX 1070. This is my main gaming PC. It's a number of years old now, maybe more than maybe 3 years old in terms of the motherboard and the CPU, maybe a little longer. And then I updated to the 1070 card last year sometime. And I'm interested right now. I'm not going to buy new silicon. I understand that my my CPU and my memory speeds are probably on the slow side. I'm going to see how much strain the 2080 Ti puts on my CPU. How much bottlenecking it does. And then maybe save up some money again before I go out and buy a new CPU. But this story of PC Games N is about that exactly. It says AMD Silicon could be your best bet for real-time ray tracing in Battlefield 5. And this is a story by Dave James from a few days ago, and he basically says here, just reading from the article, NVIDIA's new RTX GPUs may represent the way it's meant to be played when you're ray tracing the living hell out of Battlefield 5, but the new Turing graphics architecture isn't the be-all and end-all of real-time ray tracing. AMD's own hardware might have something to say about the performance of games with all those billions of rays of light beaming around. What's that? No, I'm not talking about AMD graphics cards suddenly displaying some hitherto unseen abilities when it comes to the demands of real-time ray tracing. Don't be silly. AMD barely makes gaming graphics cards these days. Good point. But it's actually the CPU side of AMD's business that could get a bit of a shot in the arm if NVIDIA is actually able to foster a genuine wave of titles using real-time ray tracing to good effect. They spoke with DICE technical creator Christian Holmquist, who explained that in order to get the RTX-enabled version of Battlefield 5 running well, it needed to go wide and utilize many more cores than its standard recommended spec. The recommended CPU specs for Battlefield 5 are either an 8-threaded core i7-4790, which is actually a little higher than what I've got, or a straight quad-core Ryzen 3 1300X. That's actually pretty impressive, actually, that the Ryzen 1300X versus the 4790, because I'm pretty sure there's a significant cost differential, the Ryzen 3 being less expensive. To achieve the results it wanted with the ray-traced version of the games, however, DICE has been targeting a beefy CPU with 12 threads, such as the mighty Ryzen 5 2600. What we have done with our DXR implementation is we go very wide on a lot of cores to offload that work, explained Holmquist. So we're likely going to require a higher minimum or recommended spec for producing RT, and very wide is the best way for the consumer in that regard with a 4-core or 6-core machine. We haven't communicated any of the specs yet, so they might change, but I think that a 6-core machine doesn't have to be aggressively clocked, but 12 hardware threads is what we kind of designed it for. But it might also work well on higher clocked 8-thread machines. The PCs we used to play the RTX-enabled version of Battlefield 5 on was running an older Intel 6-core CPU with 12 threads, but not a Coffee Lake chip. Still, hitting 12 threads on an Intel processor can get expensive. On the AMD side, less so. So this is just, I'm actually very happy to read this, okay? Because we are getting so many more cores through AMD in terms of they're pushing the core boundary. And it would be really nice to see the technology actually taking advantage of them. And it seems here, this combined with a recent article that measured, I think it was in Phoronix, that measured the AMD Threadripper CPUs on Intel versus on Windows versus Linux, and showed significantly better performance on Linux rather than Windows. And now we have, the ray tracing technology and Electronic Arts basically saying, look, we need to go wide with the cores here to take advantage of it. The cores are probably more important than the clock speeds, which again now plays into AMD's hands. So, we'll wait and see what the tests look like when this stuff is launched. But, I think my next card is probably going to be, my next CPU is probably going to be an AMD one. And I've always struggled with choosing AMD because for gaming, it is indisputable, up to now, that Intel performs better. The clock speeds outperform threads. And I'd love to see that shift, because I'd like to get rid of Intel, because AMD is more competitive and offering things that are better priced. I don't hate Intel. It bothers me that they're getting such a big price premium for their stuff. And I always like to support the guy that's basically the edgy competitor. So that is that. I'm going to skip. I had a story here to basically the Atari VCS. Let's skip that. I can come back to it later. I'm still not sure it's ever going to come out. Although, you know what, with the Atari VCS, I'm sure this Proton stuff is very positive for their direction as well. But there is just one kind of cool little story here I do want to show you, because God, I would love to have this. This is PC Gamer as well. Man, this has been a PC Gamer centric show. I don't kind of pick it. I've got Newsfeeds, and I just pick the top stories throughout the week as I read them, and PC Gamer's been on a roll here. Now I just want to show you this. This is called the Predator Thronos. It's an Acer product. It's a 485-pound gaming chair, and it has room for a PC and 3 gaming monitors. And I would give my left arm for this. So let's just play this full trailer here. That's I need one of those. Anyway, we'll be back in 10 seconds with a discovery queue. And we're back. And look at this. The Valve hardware survey has hit my computer right during this podcast. I am very excited. Thank you, Valve. I can finally tell you that I'm using Linux. Let's take a look. This looks a little different. I'm going to basically go through the hardware survey here with you guys. So please take a moment to complete the following short survey. Each month, Steam collects data about what kinds of computers, hardware, and software our customers are using. The survey data is incredibly helpful to us in that it ensures that we're making good decisions about what kinds of technology involvement to make and products to offer. The data we collect is anonymous and won't be associated with your account. It's actually, this is a different, I've never seen this survey before. I've had the hardware survey hit me before, but not this particular version of it. So let's take a look. Next. Valve hardware. Do you use the wireless extender base to improve your Steam controller's wireless connection as shown below? No, I plug the wireless receiver directly into the USB. The survey has gathered some diagnostic information about your computer, which you can see below. I've got unknown manufacturer because I built it myself. Model unknown, form factor desktop, no touch input, processor Intel, CPU i7 4770, CPU family, model type, speed, 8 logical processors, 4 physical processors, hyper-threading supported. What is SSE2? No idea. Look at all that information, huh? Prefetch unsupported. Quality operating system version Linux 4.x 64-bit, kernel name Linux, kernel version 14.18.5 dash arch 1. X server vendor, the x.org foundation. X server releases a bunch of numbers. Window Manager GNOME, Steam Runtime version beta release 2018-0614, video card 1070, driver version. This is actually lots of info that I'm sending them. Primary resolution 3840 by 2160. It's got the size of my display. Cool. Look at it. This is a lot of information. Sound cards, memory. Miscellaneous, languages. All right. Take it. The survey is complete. Thank you again for participating. If you'd like to see how your computer compares to those of other Steam subscribers, you can view the compiled results of the survey below. Let's take a quick look. What happened? It said show it and then it disappeared. Okay, well, I'm not going to take a look then. Let's go back to our story on BattleTech. Hey, welcome back, by the way. Thank you for sticking with us on Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming. I got kind of sidetracked there. First game on our discovery queue is BattleTech. Apparently, according to an article here on Linux Game Consortium, linuxgameconsortium.com, BattleTech beta support coming soon. I bought this game actually during the Steam sale in the summer. I know it's coming out to Linux. It wasn't there, and the price, I don't know what it was. It was probably like maybe 50% off. Whatever it was a good enough price that I figured I'd basically buy it and park it. Thinking it was probably going to come out for Linux, you know, in a few weeks. And it's been what, 4 or 5 months now. But according to this article, BattleTech support is coming soon with beta support for Linux in the next few weeks. So, although that is not a solid release date, do note this will not be a full release, which is interesting considering the game released back in April. Yeah, so May, June, July, August, September. Well, that's about 4 months. Paradox Interactive and Harebrained Schemes have been announced for BattleTech version 1.2, which is here, but there is no native support yet for the first turn-based tactical mech warrior game. Anyway, that's it. I haven't played this game. I'm really looking forward to finally getting it on. I I have not been able to get it to run through DXVK or Lutris and that kind of stuff, and it doesn't run through Proton either. So I don't think I've got any hours on that game right now. But I certainly am looking forward to playing it with you guys out there once it comes on. It looks like a pretty good game, and it's gotten some pretty good reviews. First game that's actually available for Linux this week is called Hero of the Kingdom 3 RPG. Going back here to Linux Game Consortium for this story. This is a casual RPG adventure. It's available on Linux, Mac, Windows via Steam. The gameplay emphasizes resource management. While the game is suitable to players of all ages and experience levels, the challenges here should you choose. Does this have a trailer on it? I'd like to see a trailer. Here we go. Let's take a quick look at the trailer. Alright. Okay, not much really to see on that trailer. It's your typical, you know, indie RPG type resource management thing. I'm going to say it's not for me. What do the reviews look like? Let's just take a look here on Steam proper. Hero of the Kingdom 3. Was there actually a 2? Yeah, there was a 2. It's only $10.34 though, so you know what? It's a pretty good deal. Reviews are very positive. 55 reviews. This just came out yesterday, so or a couple of days ago. So it's not, you know, it's just brand new. Your uncle raised you as a skilled hunter. Your peaceful life was interrupted by an ancient evil shattering the whole kingdom. Monsters climbed out of holes and innocent people died. You must face the great evil. Only your courage will save the kingdom on the brink of destruction. You know what? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to actually put it on my... The fact that it's like, you know, $10 and will probably be a few dollars on a Steam sale down the road. And I apologize to the developer, Lonely Troops, that I'm waiting for it to cost only a few bucks. I know that they worked a lot on this, but it's to be perfectly honest, it's not my kind of game. And if you get a couple of bucks out of me, better than getting nothing. So I'm going to put it on the wish list and see what it is. Let's see what else is out this week. Those are the only things that kind of really came on my radar. Let's take a look at new releases. New releases. Right. So the only other thing actually that I see here is something called 2 Point Hospital. 2 Point Hospital, which is almost a $40 game. Let's take a look here. Design stunning hospitals, cure peculiar illnesses, and manage troublesome staff as you spread your budding healthcare organization across 2 Point County. Reviews are very positive. It's got almost 1,700 reviews. It's published by Sega. 2 Point Studios is a developer. Just released a couple of days ago. There's a native Linux version for it. Not Proton, native Linux. $37.79. I'm not at all familiar with these games if they are a thing. Let's take a look.
Hospital. Over 52% of our patients believe they leave healthier than when they arrived. Our precisely calibrated equipment is operated by compassionate healthcare practitioners, many of whom have even been to medical school or watched ER. If you suffer from turtle head, let us ease your worries and noggin gently out of your body. Chest infection is no laughing matter. Put your trust and oversized shoes in our capable hands. We're building a brighter, safer future, and hardly anything will stand in our way. You deserve the best. So join us at 2 Point Hospital. We're open for new staff, new patients, and a new you. Can I go play golf yet? I'm teeing off at 3.
Okay, well, enough for me. But it looks kind of like, you know what? It seems like a kind of building sim, like a City Skylines, but for hospitals. If you're into those kinds of things, the reviews have been very positive. I gotta say, the Metacritic is 85 on it. Lots of very positive reviews, and there's a native Linux version. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for that. If this is your kind of a game, it looks like the kind of game that you will probably like. It's not my kind of a game, so I'm going to move on and put it there with, let's not kind of go anymore on the discovery queue. Let's come back 30 seconds with our focus on topic, which is best PC games rating. And we're back here with the best writing in PC games. Let me just kind of start by kind of framing this a little bit, okay? My passion for games came out of stories rather than gameplay. I got into games. I was into games during the arcades. So my brother and I would go to, you know, the local mall. I had a part-time job, so did he. We'd go there after our shift was over, and we would basically just spend 20, 30, 40 bucks at the arcade, get quarters, which was a lot more money back in the 80s than it is today. And then we kind of moved on. You know, we didn't get like a NES or a SNES or any of those types of things. I was more into buying computers, so I had an Atari 130XE. I eventually, I think we had a Commodore 64 at some point. And then I moved on to PCs. And then I really kind of got back into gaming around the launch of the Sony PlayStation. So I'd been there kind of in the earlier days, but kind of missed some of the glory days, and then got back during the Sony days. And so from the PlayStation on till now, I've pretty well had every console and every PC that you could possibly imagine. So that's kind of my background. But when I got back into gaming as an adult, really, because when the Sony PlayStation was launched, I was already a grown-up. So I'm aging myself. And at first when you're a new gamer, you buy a whole bunch of different things. I would buy sports things. I would buy just a whole bunch of different games, trying to figure out what I liked, right? And a lot of them were crap. But the first game that really, connected with me, and this was near the end, admittedly, of the PlayStation life, was Metal Gear Solid. And I think that came out in 97, 98. And before this, there was like Final Fantasy VII, which I didn't finish. There was other RPGs. There was a whole bunch of stuff that they just weren't connecting on the story beats for me. At least I wasn't giving them a chance. I was a busy guy, young guy, working long hours, and wasn't putting in 20, 30, 40 hours a week of gaming. So some of those RPGs were tough for me at the time. But Metal Gear Solid connected because I kind of, as crazy as it sounds, because the story was completely ridiculous, it just kind of felt like a good story to me, right? And it told the story in a way that I participated in it, through the gaming mechanics, and And then that became my most valued thing of gaming, was looking for stories that could resonate with me. And so I'm a big fan of good writing in games. And there's quite a few that are out there. Some of my favorite ones would be, of course, Metal Gear Solid that I already mentioned. Just off the top of my mind, in the Dreamcast era, Skies of Arcadia was frankly the first RPG that I ever finished. And you know what? It may not be the best RPG in the history of the world, but for me, having finished it, and for the first time, went through that RPG arc of, you're playing the game and you're leveling up and you think you've seen everything, and then the world opens up. And the world is 100 times bigger than you thought it was going to be. And the story is that much more complicated. That is a really good story kind of arc. And you can only experience that once. And whatever that game is for you, that's probably one of your favorite games of all time. Story writing was actually quite good as well. I really enjoyed the story in that. But really, for me, the best story of all time is Knights of the Old Republic. And, set in the Star Wars universe, and if you haven't played it, you should. It's available now on Steam Play via Proton. So if you've got a Linux machine, you can now play it just by basically installing it. There's also Knights of the Old Republic 2, which is worthwhile playing, but Knights of the Old Republic is the best story I've ever played. It's an RPG, of course, set in the Star Wars universe. It is complex. They did not adhere to the typical canon because they set it in the Old Republic, which is thousands of years before the Star Wars trilogy, the typical trilogy takes place. So they were free to basically create their own universe, and this was BioWare, and BioWare are master game and storytellers, or at least they were. And for the technology and for the time and for the era, you know what? You connected with those characters in such an incredible way. You felt that the universe was real. The story, as I said, was deep and complex with a lot of emotional relationships and emotional ties connected to it, with this amazing twist at the end that I didn't see coming. And I'm not sure if anything would ever top that for me. What comes close is Mass Effect 2. And Mass Effect 2 is another BioWare game. And one of the reasons that I'm so upset at Electronic Arts many of the times is just their utter destruction of BioWare. The two best stories I've ever played are both BioWare games. And if you've played Andromeda, Mass Effect Andromeda, which I'm playing through right now, by the way, it's or even Dragon Age Inquisition. I mean, the amount by which they have declined is just incredible. I mean, they fell so far that they hit terminal velocity. Okay, they can't fall any further, I hope. But Mass Effect 2 took everything that was KOTOR, and basically brought it forward a generation in terms of technology, minus perhaps the twist, which really kind of scored KOTOR. But Mass Effect is the better game. Mass Effect 2 in particular is the better game. KOTOR is the better story. It's just on balance, I would say Mass Effect 2 is the better game. And if you haven't played that, that is also available on Steam Play, and that is also compatible now on Proton, or you can get it on Origin, and I have launched it on Origin as well through DXVK on Lutris, and that works over there as well, so you can play it on both sides. What else? What else is kind of out there for me? I think those, those are the two, those are both so far ahead of everything else that it's almost kind of calling a third one is doing those games a disservice. But another one that comes to mind would be Uncharted 2, which is a PlayStation 3 game. Uncharted 2 is is peak action adventure game, let's say. The story itself is your typical kind of Indiana Jones type of story, but perfected, right, in gaming. And the lead characters and the characters in it, it's such a fun game. It's not deep, it's not emotionally, taxing like KOTOR is, or perhaps even Mass Effect 2 or some of the other games out there. It is just such a joyous, wonderful, fun game to play. And a big part of that, because the gaming mechanics are not that amazing. The graphics are superb, I have to say. But a big part of that is the writing is just so good. The characters feel so real. And I've been recently playing Uncharted 4, Thieves' End, and that franchise, unfortunately, has also kind of taken a hit over the air. Right? A lot of the times, look, you hit your peak, and it's hard to maintain it, right? So that would be my list. I'm not saying that's extensive. There's probably names that I've missed that I would think about later on. Like, for example, last week I talked about the best games that I felt while I was playing them and didn't mention KOTOR, right? So none of this stuff is definitive. I'm not doing some kind of a scientific thing here. I'm just kind of off the top of my head trying to figure out what I like and share it with you guys. PC Gamer here, though, basically did maybe put some more thought into it. Andy Kelly wrote this article August 5th. Of 2016. So the story's a couple of years old. But let's take a look and see what their best writing in PC games are. I don't think they've got these in any kind of order. But the first game on their list here is Portal 2. And I have to admit, I've never finished this game. I've got this game. I've loved Portal, the first game. Portal would also have to be, the first one would have to be on my best stories of all time. And if Portal 2 is even better, then maybe I should give it another shot. I found Portal 2, every time that I've started to play it, just kind of more of the same. I guess you could say that to any sequel. It didn't seem to me, it just didn't have whatever it took for me to push through and get past those first 3 or 4 hours. Maybe I'll give that another shot, though. Portal 2 is certainly considered one of the best games of all time. Native Linux, of course. It's by Valve Corporation. South Park: The Stick of Truth. I've also got this game. I think I've got it on the Xbox or the PlayStation. This has some very witty writing, but it's just not for me. I mean, to be honest, it's a little bit rude. It's a little bit irreverent. I did not finish the game, so perhaps I'm not giving it its fair share, but it's just South Park's not my thing. It is by Obsidian, however, and we're big fans of Obsidian. Planescape Torment. It's another game that I have that I've never finished. I've started a number of times, but I've never finished it, and there's a remastered version of Planescape Torment available on Linux right now if you want to kind of take a look at it. It was originally by Black Isle Studios, and it is I've started it multiple times. It apparently has very rich and intricate writing. It apparently gives you an incredible sense of freedom and control. You know what? It's another RPG that's on my never-ending list of games to play. I'm going to skip the next few because I do not own them and have never played them. They are Broken Sword, The Shadow of the Templars, Revolution Software, that's a 96 game, and 80 Days by Inkle, which I've never heard of, to be honest with you. So let's kind of move that. Firewatch by Campo Santo, year 2016. Here's another game that I have that I've just never... I probably paid halfway through Firewatch, and I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a good twist at the end. It just kind of seemed a little boring to me. I mean, it seemed like a lot of kind of to-do things, and you got to go here, and you got this new job, and you got to go to the lake, and I don't know. It just kind of, it just didn't have enough of a kick early on in the game to have me want to continue. And that's, you know, an important part of writing is to basically keep the pace going in a way that keeps the reader or the character or the player going through. Now, hey, by the way, I apologize. It seems like somebody's probably trimming some grass or something in the background. So if you can hear it, I apologize. It's not coming from my end, but that's what happens when you live in a city. Next game is Wolfenstein: The New Order. I've been playing through Wolfenstein: The New Order right now. Sorry, this is the original one. I've been playing through the sequel. Yes, I have played through Wolfenstein: The New Order. And Wolfenstein: The New Order is a great game. And a large part of that is due to the incredible writing. It is just so real, the writing. The characters are well developed. They're fun. They seem real. You know, at the end of the day, you're behind the barrel of a gun shooting things. So in a first-person shooter, having a connection, it's very hard to create a connection in a first-person shooter for that reason. I would definitely agree with The New Order, Wolfenstein. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture is another game that I've never finished. Pillars of Eternity is a terrific game. I would highly recommend that one. I've put quite a few hours in that one. I'm still working through Pillars of Eternity 2, which is also very good. Batman Arkham Asylum, another game I have that I've never finished, although I've played that a few times. The Witcher 3 I've never finished. Sunless Sea I've never finished. Gone Home I have finished. Yeah, I get it, you know. To be honest, I think Gone Home gets more credit than it deserves. It's not that great. I mean, it's kind of cool, the mystery and whatever, and, you know, a bit of a twist, but, you know, Her Story, I've tried Her Story. Again, it hasn't really worked for me. Half-Life 2 is, of course, a terrific game. One of the greatest games of all time. Valve, I mean, it's just, if you haven't played that, it is just so deep, so involved, so interesting, and it has aged so well 14 years later. Mass Effect 2, good to see that on the list. Spec Ops: The Line is a game that I have actually played through. This is not a great shooter, but it is a great story. And I have to say that I won't kind of spoil it because you should kind of go through it. But if you can put aside, 6, 7, 8 hours and go through the story to the end, the pacing is not terrific, but the story is. BioShock is the last game here. BioShock, I did not like BioShock when it first came out, but I like it more now. It's kind of grown on me. BioShock 2 and BioShock Infinite were not as good as BioShock, the first one. I did get a chance to replay BioShock when it was remastered. It is playable on Proton. It's aged very well. I didn't give it enough credit when I played it the first time. It is a much better game and a better story than I gave it credit for. The last game that is not on this list that I'll just add on to my list would be Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a completely different animal because the writing is not in your face. Okay, the writing is the mystery, and the world is created with little guidance for you as the user. And as you explore, you need to work at it, though. It's not there. It won't slap you in the face at all. You can miss everything if you want. But once you understand the lore and the background, and you go through the detail and you solve the mystery of the game, it is so incredible. And the work required to figure out the story is, in part, the reward. And I love that kind of irony. Anyway, that's our focus on best writing in games. I'll be back in 10 seconds to wrap this up. And thanks for sticking with us here on episode number 023 as we put it to bed. And if you are still here with us and you haven't subscribed to any of our programs, please go out and do so. probably starting with mostlylinux.libsyn.com, libsyn.com. This is our main audio podcast site. If you're watching on YouTube or PeerTube or Twitch, you can see it on the screen right now. And up at the top, you can see you've got a little Twitter thing, you've got a little email thing, you've got a subscribe thing, and you've got an Apple Podcast subscription icon as well. You can basically subscribe through any system that you want, including Google Play, including Spotify, including Stitcher, including just basically searching for either Mostly Linux or @mostly_Linux or Mostly Linux without the underscore on your podcast player. Just do a quick search on it and you will find us there, and please subscribe. We're also on Twitter, of course, @mostly_Linux. Follow us there. We tweet all week. All sorts of stuff, cool things, and many of the stories that we actually run at the end of the week are tweeted throughout the week as well. We are on Reddit. We have our own subreddit, actually, mostly_Linux, that you can go to and post and get get access to our latest games, our latest podcast episodes, giveaways, and all of that kind of stuff. That's r/mostly_Linux. We're of course on YouTube, where you can go there and catch every episode that we have there, including some other stuff that we might upload. You might want to take a look at our Ed Sheeran, The Shape of You, live Toronto, August 31st, 2018 video that we have there. We were pretty close to being front row center, so that's probably the best video you're going to get out of that concert. So check that out. That's getting quite a few views, 166 views already. Puts to shame the rest of our podcast, but hey, what can you do? He's a popular guy. We're on Twitch.
Really come alive with this portion going towards the north.
Where we premiere the episode for video every week. I received notice, however, that unless you are an affiliate, Twitch will no longer allow Twitch premiere streaming, which is unfortunate because I don't think I am an affiliate yet, and I'm not really sure whether I want to be. Every week, the podcast, we put it up on PeerTube, YouTube, Twitch, and of course all of the audios. And out of all of them, the least viewed is Twitch, even though we spend most of our time promoting it. So you know what? If they're not going to allow premieres, screw them. We won't premiere it there. But you know what? You can also go to peertube.social and look for Mostly Linux there, and you can find our videos there as well. And yeah, what else do we have? I think that's it. That's all of the many places you can find us. We're also on Steam if you want to search for our group, Mostly Linux. And that's it. That's episode 23, and it's a wrap. You be good to yourself, okay? And find somebody that you love and haven't told them that you love them in a while, and just out of the blue, give them a hug and tell them that you love them. It'll feel good for you too. Anyway, see you next week. Take care, folks.